Hi folks, just doing another video about hi-fi accessories. What I mean by accessories is speaker cable, RCA interconnects, power cords, power distributors, still points and isolation points and racks and speaker cable. Anything that really is added to your hi-fi that connects it together, isolates it, is trying to sort of maximize the performance of your components. Now, I was kind of on the fence regarding all this kind of stuff. I generally thought that if you had good 18 gauge cable that was of a significant, a certain level of quality, say 300 or 400 quid, that would be enough. That would make it, that would let your system sing. It would not, there would be nothing that would be missing in terms of what you were getting from allowing your music to flow through. And a lot of engineers and a lot of people in the audio industry and professional people in the audio industry, they kind of look at, cables and things like that as sort of a black art and sort of placebo effect and, expectation bias, things like that. Which I certainly didn't have, because I was very much, leaning towards thinking it was all bollocks, that it was all smoke and mirrors and just, marketing nonsense, and that people were buying it because they were being told that it was good and, all of this stuff. But there was always this point where I kind of thought, well, how can 30 or 40 people in a room at a hi-fi show or at someone's home, some of whom don't even know a cable has been changed in the system, people walking in and out, and they notice a significant difference between one cable that may be £300 and one cable that is £1,000. How can that be? It's not mass hypnosis. We're not talking about, everyone suddenly having this supernatural placebo effect. And it's not expectation bias, because I was, if anything, ready to take these back as I got them on demo, with the option of bringing them back. The first one I got was an RCA interconnect going from my Chord Cutest into the YBA preamp. And yeah, as I said in another video, that absolutely blew my socks off. It was a component grade performance level of upgrade. This is, we're talking about another amplifier here that is twice the price of what I already have. Those kinds of improvements, that kind of glare-free analog, lower noise floor, blacker background, those kind of things that you associate with a big jump in performance from a component that would cost perhaps twice as much, or for example, if you've got a 10 grand pre-power like I have, to then go up to something like a £15,000 one. These are the kind of differences that we're talking about here. So that's really what I wanted to discuss, is my kind of adventures in hi-fi accessories and what they have done for my system, and how they changed that kind of skeptical, somewhat pig-headed viewpoint that I had on them. As I think as men, a lot of us find it very difficult, especially as we get older, to change our mind and to be proved wrong. And especially engineers and people who work in the professional industry, they've got tons of data and research and all the rest of it, and A/B blind testing and all this kind of stuff. Now, there's a number of factors that can not allow you to experience what I've experienced. One of the major ones is if your speakers and your components are not transparent enough to be able to reveal those differences. Because as you start to go up to the more expensive cables, you need to have speakers that are capable of being a window onto your kind of music reproduction, and that's kind of what you get if you've chosen the right pair of speakers, the right kind of amplifier. These speakers are kind of interesting for the money. They're about 10,000, which is not a lot really for how much speaker you get, considering the tweeters and everything, and the mid range is the same components that are used in the big scalers and focal and grand utopias. You know, you're getting these speakers can really reveal a lot. I mean, you can keep stepping up with this, and you can put these have been on the end of name statements, which are like £70,000 amplifiers and all the rest of it, Vitus and everything else, and they can keep going and going and going. So obviously, when you have speakers that are this much of a window onto the reproduction, that cable that you've put in will be a much bigger difference, and that's what I noticed when I put the first RCA cable in, and I had £100 cord Clearway cable before then. So, you know, I went from that to I think it was 600 or something, £600, and it comes with a primer box. Just to recap, you know, for people who haven't seen my other video, and that's uses rare earth metals and things to help ground. And what you're essentially doing with decent cables is you're keeping away stray RF and electromagnetic interference and everything that you get that normally would take down the performance. Cables can't add anything to your system. They're passive, but what they can do is they can remove any kind of unwanted noise and nasties that really affect the sense of everything from the bass to the timing to the precision of the imaging, to the glare, all of that kind of stuff, and you hear a difference. Now, as I said, there is a huge divide within the audio community where people are, you know, very skeptical about it and very stubborn and very pig-headed, and for whatever reason, they haven't got the opportunity to really, either they've got the wrong cables, because there are high-end cables out there that cost a fortune that do nothing, and there's plenty of them, but there's also plenty of them that actually do what they say on the tin, and this is certainly a brand that does that. And I would say these things are worth more than what, I mean, I expect them to probably go up a little bit in price, but these cables are performing 3 times what their asking price is. I mean, I've heard cables that are more expensive than these. For example, the name Superlumina and other cables, Nordost, for example, that are 3 times or more expensive than these cables, and these perform better. They are really, really special. And as I said before, the guys down at Martin's know this, and that's why they're so obsessed with them. Now, as I said, I got this first cable, this RCA interconnect, and then I got a speaker cable, which is quite a bit of money. You know, I was paying almost £900 for very short. I think it was 2.5 meters on each side, and that's a lot of money. I mean, that's more than twice the price of the name cable that I had on before. And of course, even though I'd experienced the initial shock of the RCA cable, it went up another notch. I'll just show you those quickly. They also have a primer box on there as well. So I've now got one for the USB, bought a USB today, which was another bump. Then I got, obviously these are the analog cables that go out the back. And so, yeah, I've also got a power cable as well. Can't really see it there, but an Ontrek power cable. And that made all of those, every time I did it gradually because I couldn't afford to buy them all at once. Each upgrade that I did had a bump in that kind of analog purity and space between instruments and wider soundstage and everything, you know, just took a step up. And I mentioned before in the last video, I put still points underneath my YBA, as you can see there. Now they're about 660 quid for 3 of them, and I thought, well, I'm not going to like those. I'll take those back. There's a slight bit of spacing there between them, and they kind of rock on this, you know, anti-vibrational kind of baffling system. I don't know how they actually have engineered them, but they're incredible. And I looked at them and thought, well, that's going to be bullshit. they're not going to do anything. And first of all, I put them under my DAC, and I noticed a big difference. And I had it down here. It wasn't even on the Quadraspire. It was just down on the other rack, which is not nearly as well isolated. And that made a huge difference. But then I thought, well, if I've got all this equipment on top of my preamp, and I've got the DAC, and I've got the Inuus linear power supply, and the server, the NAS drive, that's surely going to, elevate the performance in all of those products. And sure enough, it did. There was a huge difference between it just being under the DAC, because these, I put these exactly where the YBA ones were, because they use 3 feet, which is quite a clever sort of system they've got going on there, where they have less vibration. And the treble just was laser precise, almost too precise. Like it was coming out in layers. It was incredible holographic imaging, like I'd never experienced before, even on these speakers. And even though, as I said, the YBA and the Mac is a really good synergy, it just took all of that and sort of raised the bar. Monday, I'm going to be putting in an Ethernet cable. Actually arrived today, but it's in the concierge's office, so I can't get to it. And that's a Supra, which is not as expensive not nearly as expensive as an Ontrek, and I'm sure it's probably not quite as good, but that was the one thing I could not bring myself to spend, 450 quid or whatever on an Ethernet cable. This Supra one that I'm getting, this Cat 8 one, is supposed to have, according to certain reviewers, has knocked the socks off, much more expensive £500 Ethernets. If you can believe that, you can spend that much money on Ethernet, and probably a lot more. But I wanted to get that sort of help, sort of raise it further. So I've got that downstairs, and I will be putting that in on Monday, and hopefully there'll be a noticeable difference, and I'm sure they will. And the other thing I did as well, which I may not have mentioned, is I took the Cord Qtis and have put a battery on it, which you can get for power bank battery, which you can get for mobile phones, and they last about 3 days, continuous power, and then you have to charge them up again, and that made a difference. That tightened the bass, and when I put in the power cable, that tightened the bass, because I'm using a subwoofer over there, which really I love to be able to experience that kind of bass that goes down to sort of live gig levels, where you've got 18 hertz range all the way going up to, through the whole frequency. It's fantastic. It really is a big difference. I'm basically trying to think about what else I haven't covered. I've gone over most things now in terms of accessories and what they have brought to me, but I think mainly in terms of the sound quality, the jump in sound quality between having this almost full loom of Ontrek cables in there, and then tomorrow a Ethernet. What I've got so far is a level of imaging and life to the system. What I would say that adding decent cables to a system does is it gives it life. It frees it up. It feels like the speakers have completely disappeared. Everything has an extremely sort of palpable presence and timbre. That word still freaks me out. It's weird. I'm still not sure if I'm saying it right. So it gives you that believability and tonality, where you get this sense of real voices, hanging in the room. And my cat is completely freaked out now, even at low volumes. His head is just twitching all over the place, just where are these sounds coming from? Because the speakers just take a back seat. They're not even there anymore. It's just music floating around them. It's magical, absolutely mind-blowing, magical stuff. And it seems to be performing at a level that is, far beyond the sum of its parts. This system is not massively expensive. It's probably about 30,000 for the 2-channel system, without the home cinema stuff. And I tell you, it has gone up to another level. I mean, it really is just, I've heard a lot of systems that are that sort of price and then beyond. and it is performing way beyond its price range, and that is down to the cabling. I mean, when you've got cables that are sort of more complex and have more of a performance kind of more from an engineering level and design level, they're almost sort of superseding the equipment. That's when it's really special. And yeah, even the USB cable gave a real jump in quality. And I mean, I was listening to an album the other day, Deadmau 5, who's electronic artist. He's very good. If you like electronic music and you haven't heard of him, then you're living on Mars, because he's amazing. But what I found was on some of these tracks and many other tracks is that I felt like I was cocooned in a kind of sphere of like sound that was almost 360 degrees around me. There was this one track with wind on it, and the wind was kind of floating behind and above and around the speakers, and also way out to the sides. It's almost coming round to the level of being actually behind you, and you're just cocooned in this kind of textured, analog like kind of sound where all of these details are coming out, but they're never bright the way they were before. These speakers, this is the thing. I mean, I actually would prefer at this stage with this Lumen here to actually have metal tweeters, because I think these tweeters, when you get them right and when you get these speakers sounding right, they are amazing. They are really. I mean, I think a lot of people, they might write off the Sopras and think, well, they were too bright or this, that, and the other. They take a lot of fucking about. I will say that. I've had to spend hours towing these things in and getting them to image just right. And I've spent a long time, obviously, putting all of these different cables and finding finally the right cables that really gel well, and how this system synergizes. I mentioned the Mac and the YBA, and how the guys in Nintronics, when we combined that sort of fluid mid-range that you get from the YBA, and that sort of power you get from the Macintosh with that solid, pounding bass line that they do so well. Because the Mac, as I said before in another video, for me, I wasn't a big fan of the mid-range and treble, and it wasn't bad, it was just a bit matter of a fact. When you put the YBA and the Mac together, because the YBA couldn't do the bass, it was a bit soft and light in the bass, some magic happened, and everyone in that showroom came in and was listening to it because they were just amazed at how they were synergizing. So I now with the Ontrek have really tamed the treble on these speakers, and that kind of slight artificiality or clinical quality. There's still got bite to it. It's not cuddly. It's not soft. It's still got masses of bite, and which I'm glad of. I don't think that if I put the Ontrek into with some Dynaudios, I would have still got that kind of level of what it's doing at the moment is sounding almost like electrostatic speakers. You get that incredible transparency, but also with the kind of dynamics that you get from good box speakers, and that's what it's doing, as well as having that subwoofer, which is adding some real meat and potatoes. I mean, I've hooked it directly up to the actual the speak-on, going from my speaker, from the right speaker, and that actually has improved it a lot over originally having it running off the amp. Believe it or not, this was recommended to me by Rob, who is one of the head guys at REL for the UK division, and he said, you've got to hook it up to the speaker, and it's phenomenal. I mean, really, the way all of this is gelling together, I could not be happier. I'm finding it very, very hard to find fault with it. And in fact, when I was talking about how awesome the scale of it is and all the boxes that it's ticking, and the sense of palpable instrument pressure that you get in the room, and that just pinpoint imaging, really you'd look at this, the component parts, and you'd think, how is this even doing that? But it is. The only way you'd be able to experience it is to actually sit down here and listen. I've not even acoustically treated this room. It's just insane. This is a concrete room, but it contains all of the bass, and I thought it was going to sound fucking terrible because there's quite a lot of echo in here, and it's not harsh at all. I wouldn't want to add any kind of acoustic treatment to this room the way it's sounding at the moment, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's got such life and such kind of sense of excitement and drama, and there's points where you feel like getting out of your seat and dancing, and that there's been moments when I've been sitting here listening to this system, which has never happened before. I've had all kinds of different kit, I've had all kinds of different speakers, I've had all kinds of different cables, and I've never sat there and just gone, fuck. I mean, I'm constantly listening to stuff on it and just going, fucking hell, that is just insane. How is that even happening? I feel like you feel like you're tripping on some tracks. They're sort of whirling around all over the place, leaving the confines of the speakers. And that is primarily, it was good before, don't get me wrong, but that is primarily down to what the cables have unleashed, and that is a fucking night and day difference. We are not talking about a slight difference in quality here. We're not talking about I don't know, this is like hit you in the face, sort of, blowing you away, and you're sitting in there and you're going, fuck, why have I not done this years ago? Why have I not bothered to treat myself to proper cables? And the last one I need to get is between the power amp and the preamp, and then that will be the final cable, because I'm not bothering with the home cinema side of things. I still have the name cable in the center. Of course it would improve it, but for me, home cinema, I think, it's the music where you're going to really, really feel that difference between the cables, and I've got to the stage now where, for once, and I'm an absolute perfectionist, I will say, when I've got this last cable, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to buy another thing. I mean, the only thing I will do is get this system fixed if anything ever breaks in it or develop any problems, but I will not be spending any more money. And that is testament to how good these cables are and the synergy of this system, because I am absolutely fucking floored by it. And I don't, I listen to other systems that cost significantly more, and yes, there's a few things they do slightly better. The bass is slightly more controlled, although you could argue not as fun. So there's that, and there's a bit more, a bit slightly more natural sound, like ever so slightly. This is listening to systems that cost £120,000 over a system that costs £30,000. Multiple, of these systems you could buy for that. And I don't want to upgrade. I don't want to get anything else. I don't want, unless I was to spend that silly money, then I would get the slightest bump. I'm done. That's it. And that's probably a bad thing for a dealer, because he sold you some cables that have brought such amazing life and amazing performance to your system that you have quit. You've quit the hobby. You've taken a back seat, and you're now, for the first time, I'm enjoying everything. I'm not analysing it and thinking, oh, that could be better. Well, that's a bit shit. I don't know, that's kind of a bit brittle there, or that's a bit harsh, or it's ticking all of the hi-fi boxes, but then having something else, that life, that energy, that feeling of emotion when a singer is just locked in the centre of the room and you can hear the urgency and the drama in their voice. I've got that. That is what I've been searching for on my 15-year audiophile crusade, and doing it with an average income, or probably below average income, if I'm honest, and trying to get that and to have succeeded in that. And everyone knows how tricky it is to get a system to sound really good. There are so many high-end systems that sound fucking awful. It's ridiculous, and people just do not get even what they paid for it, let alone a system that performs way beyond its component parts. And that is about synergy, and that is about cables. So those skeptics out there that are running 18 gauge lamp wire and the rest of it, and they're so smug about how, I know what I'm talking about, and you don't. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You're profoundly wrong, and you need to go and listen to some proper, decent cables and experiment, and then listen to some decent speakers on them, and you will see a massive, and I don't mean small, a massive difference, and it will unleash the beast. It will unleash your system's potential to be something that is life, is real, is like flesh. If I'm not exaggerating. I love music. What could be better than to experience music? Music is art, and it moves your soul. It makes me happy, as do films as well. That's why I've also invested in the film side of things. And this system is doing both of them to a level that I never thought I'd ever reach. I never thought I'd ever be able to reach this level because I didn't have the money to do it, or possibly I was just constantly disappointed because I was failing at doing that. I would buy an upgrade, I'd buy a cable, or I'd buy this or the other, and somehow it just wasn't working together. You know, I had the name kit, and it wasn't working with these speakers, and then I've had other speakers, and I've gone through different amps, and I've gone through this, that, and the other. And I've just always been either disappointed it's too harsh, or it's too cuddly, or the bass is just wrong, or there's some, you know, it doesn't breathe, or it's just average sounding. And now to get to that stage where it's sort of almost supernatural in its presentation, and that's incredible. So please go out there and be less skeptical, and be willing to change your mind and be proved wrong, because I was, and I'm glad of it. And now music sessions, I cannot drag myself away from listening to music. You know, the performer on a good recording is standing there in the room, not just standing there in the room, but with the expressiveness of the emotion in the performance, and that at any price level is worth it. So these cables may have cost me over two grand, and they're still going to cost me more because I've got one more to go, but I would have paid double. I really would have paid double just to get that. So go out there and have a look and experiment, because it's very much worth it. Now that's all. If anyone has any questions or they want to ask me anything, I'm happy to discuss it. Please don't start, battering each other over the head about who's right and who's wrong, and I'm an engineer and I'm this and that, I'm a musician and you're completely wrong. I've experienced this, and many other people have, and as I said, if there's a ton of people in a room and they're all experiencing the same thing, then that's reality. That's not psychological placebo. So yeah, that's all, folks. Take care. Bye bye.